flood you. What? What if your government tries to throw you in a dam? What? You're going to want a shotgun. Oh. What? An automatic rifle. And a lot of ammo. Gun? Gun.
We're all set to riot. Buy a gun. Before you lose your Second Amendment. Buy a gun. They'll burn you out like a Waco. They'll stick your ass in a camp. Jack booty cops in riot gear. Gonna kick your ass and laugh. The revolution is on its way. Better lock and load your AK. Buy a gun, 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 buy a gun. Before you wish you bought a gun. Buy a gun, 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 buy a gun. Before you wish you bought a gun. We're all set to riot. Buy a gun. Before you lose your Second Amendment. Buy a gun. They gave your money to the banksters. They stole your pension funds. It's time that we took to the streets. It's time we had our turn. A revolution is on its way, and the founding fathers would say, buy a gun, 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 buy a gun. Before you wish you bought a gun. Buy a gun, 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 buy a gun. Before you wish you bought a gun. Riot in the streets. Revolution's not clean and neat. You gotta riot in the streets. Revolution's not clean and neat. You gotta drag them through the streets.
It is Tuesday. You have to ride in the streets because if you're not, you're really not paying attention. This is PrimerTime on UCY.tv, your home for revolutionary entertainment. I am the Commissar, Michael.
And I am his loyal associate, Nicholas. Michael, what's going on?
You are part of my apparatus.
The apparatus of fear.
Welcome to tonight's broadcast from the Ministry of Defense.
Yes, from the lovely downtown studios in the Republic of Matagorda.
Oh yeah. I've had to vacate that stronghold.
that position has become untenable.
We shall no longer defend the island. All right. So what's going on?
Oh, it's one of those days that I'm happy I'm no longer a recruiter.
Yeah. Looks like there's a lot of stuff going on there. We've got some more terrorism, and I think they're actually calling it terrorism this time.
Oh, I think the FBI came right out and said, we are investigating this as a terrorist attack.
All right. So this is on Army Recruiters. I have seen that they said that the gunman used an AK-47 or an AK-47 variant. It's probably not full automatic. But, the news never makes any sort of delineation or distinction.
It could have been a BB rifle, and the news would have said it was an AK-47. So,
I believe this time it was an AK-47.
Yeah.
There's a very iconic picture that shows the office of one of the recruiting stations shot up right around a sign that it shows it to be a gun-free zone.
You mean an all-inclusive victim zone?
That's right. And this time it got, four Marines as victims.
Yeah, so four Marines passed, and then a sailor passed as well. So, sad thing is, Michael, this is not the first time this has happened. We've had shootings at recruiting stations across the country. Going back towards September 11th, there was a shooting at a recruiting station in Little Rock, Arkansas, killed a soldier and then a potential soldier, what we call a future soldier, an individual who had joined the Army but had not yet left for basic training. The Times Square recruiting station in New York City has been the target of several bombing attacks. Fortunately, they haven't had anybody lost there. But here's the bottom line. You've got a civilian law enforcement apparatus within this nation that the chiefs of staff for the military branches believe is sufficiently capable to protect and defend, active duty military members who are right out there in our communities. If you'd be hard pressed to find a strip mall or a mall that doesn't have a recruiting station or what they call Armed Forces Career Centers now uh, in them. These guys are usually the best of their peer group at a young grade. We're talking guys that are 24, 25
Well,
years old.
this is a method of advancement in the military, right? This is part of the
Certainly,
career
certainly,
path
yeah,
of
and I
life.
can
So
I can
this
tell you
is
from
a,
personal experience that I advanced as fast and as quickly as I did because of my successful tour as a recruiter. And like I said, I had recruited in a very hostile environment, which was the San Francisco Bay Area. But like I said, you embrace the suck and you get out there and you do your job. You do it to the best of your ability, and hopefully good things will happen. And unfortunately, there are people that understand that our recruiters are extremely vulnerable, and also that they are the only members of the military in some communities for hundreds of miles. So, what's a terrorist looking to do? A terrorist is looking to get exposure, so that way he can have a graphic style attack, get his name and get his cause out there on the news. And what better way to do it in a position where you know that somebody's not going to be able to defend themselves?
well, Nick, it's happened far too many times, and we see that the response by the Department of Defense and the federal government has been to deny the service members the right to defend themselves. Is that
Certainly,
correct? We've got a
certainly.
story with that.
Yeah,
Well,
and here's the thing. So you have
well, can you give us a couple of details from that story right there? Because I mean, I think this is really showing where the problem lies. In all of the problem, we always have all these symptoms and all that, but there's a root cause to the infection, and the legislators not allowing our servicemen to arm themselves. I mean, by God, who better to deal with a threat than, for God's sakes, the Army? Like, don't you guys have training? Right?
well,
You guys all know how to like operate some kind of weapon or something, maybe return fire,
well,
stop it from occurring.
I'll tell you this much. Okay, so you got to kind of look at it as two different ways. You've got the legislative actions, which is what our Congress will authorize us to do, and then you got the bureaucratic actions, which is what our Department of Defense will do and take under advisement from Congress. So the Secretary of Defense has just ordered a review of facility security procedures and policies. He wants that due by the end of this week. Some of the service chiefs, and actually one of the new ones who's been nominated to take over the position of the Chief of Staff of the Army, uh, they are basically saying that they'll review things such as putting up bulletproof glass, making certain things available to recruiters in order for them to stay protected, whether it's shields and such. But when it comes down to it, most commanders in the services, most commanders are very tepid and downright do not support arming the vast bulk of the force. The National Guard chiefs and governors in certain states have made a move to immediately arm members of the National Guard recruiting force, but those are two separate things. The National Guard belongs to the state, which can be federalized in times of emergency, but for the most part, they're there for civic assistance during disaster relief. Uh, the U.S. Army Reserve and the U.S. Army are more in line with each other, and they take their orders from the Department of Defense and the Service Secretary. So,
And Department of Defense just said no guns. Is that correct?
well, it's not that they've said no guns. It's saying that they're wanting to get this security review off the ground, and then they'll make a decision at some point. But over the
That
vast,
sounds like a big line of bullshit.
well, pretty much it is, because you got to figure out that for the number of shootings that happen on military installations, you know, while compared to Chicago, they're minuscule in percentage, but they get the bulk of the media coverage because it's like going into a shooting gallery. There's a law enforcement agency on post, but it's not your average MPs. Most posts have civilian Department of Defense law enforcement agencies. So, not every soldier is out there carrying a
How
gun on
many
post.
how many bases would have not necessarily Department of Defense civilian employees, but how many would have contracted out to say maybe like Fingerhut or G4S or
No, none of them are
uh,
none of them are contracting out like that because the Department of Defense has the responsibility for maintaining.
Sorry, I said finger hut. I meant whacking hut.
Yeah, no.
Finger hut are the
Fingerhut is the
sent those
magazine people.
catalog, the catalog people.
Yeah.
Defend your place. 3-part expand the slacks.
Yeah, no, they're like I said, you're going to have Department of Defense, and mostly these guys are retired military that are out there manning the gates and things like that. But the law enforcement agencies that actually go around post, yeah, you'll have military police, and on Air Force bases, you'll have security forces, Navy folks. You know, they've got their own master at arms, and then the Marine Corps they have their own MPs as well. The big problem.
Let me stop you here real quick. And considering that a lot of people haven't lived on base, a lot of our listeners may not have lived on base, have no connection with the military, have never had to deal with it. You've spent quite a bit of time on base and quite a bit of time with these kind of civilian cops that are working on base. And in that time, how did you view those police versus how you see the police now in the United States?
Well, they're apples and oranges, really, when you think about it, because the folks that are usually guarding a military installation have had some connection to the military in order to be getting hired on through the Department of Defense or any one of their contract agencies. They want somebody who's familiar with federal law enforcement and understands physical security as well as personnel security and safeguarding of facilities and sensitive items. Your average police officer is going to need to be versed in local and state statutory.
Do they show up and taser people immediately?
Oh no.
Okay, all right.
And in the sense that I have been witness to some harsh takedown tactics in the past. I will tell you that every single time that I've ever seen that happen on a military installation, the officer who was conducting the arrest has been reprimanded. One time I have personal knowledge because I actually read the arresting officer's report. He hogtied. It was an Air Force Security Forces member. He hogtied an Army soldier who was stationed on post, was coming through the gate, and he had him hogtied face down on a pavement, which was in violation of their regulations at what used to be Kelly Air Force Base in San Antonio.
That means hot pavement.
Oh yeah. It wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't good. Pavement. So that individual was removed from his career field, and that's the last time he ever arrested anybody. But like you said, the difference being, I see the civilian law enforcement much more apt to escalate a situation rather than de-escalate a situation, and I think that goes under the premise that every civilian is guilty. We just haven't figured out what they've done yet.
We've not just tasered you for it yet.
Yeah, and like I said, you will never see an 87-year-old man in a wheelchair getting shot on post. That won't happen.
That's probably a good thing, because how do you give that guy's grandson a gun the next day and tell him to go out and run around?
Yeah, no. And that's one of the things that you'll see as you hear about our government going and trying to pursue this pseudo war against ISIS and saying, hey, we want to limit civilian casualties. We don't want to create any more terrorists than are already out there. That's actually, that's part and parcel part of something called COIN, or counterinsurgency operations. And yeah, you go ahead and take out a bunch of bad guys, but you rope in one, civilian who just happened to be the collateral damage. You just created a couple new generations of bad guys. So, the police, I think in today's society, and we've got a couple of stories that we're gonna talk about, they really have to mind the line that, hey, nothing gives them the right to summarily execute anybody based on the premise of they feared for their life. That's one of the things that I think a lot of people kind of...
So people who would live on base do not have to fear getting pulled over for, say, failure to use a turn signal or seatbelt or something like that. They don't have to fear getting drug out of the car.
You have to maintain your vehicle in accordance with all, state, federal regulations. And
they should be pulled over, but they don't necessarily get the immediate nightstick and taser treatment.
Oh, no. That part, Yeah, you
See,
must
that's the
have
problem.
you
There's no
must have
problem
done something
pulled
bad
over.
if you get that right off the bat.
Okay, all right. They're looking for somebody to beat at that point.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, put it this way. I've been stopped on post. I think the last time I was stopped on post, I was getting
How
ready
many
to
times?
fly out to. I think I was getting ready to fly out to the National Training Center. So it was another 3 o'clock in the morning. I've got every single piece of gear that I'm going to take with me for a month, and I went through what was called a stale yellow light. And I didn't know what a stale yellow light was. I
I
figured that
think
as long
stale
as the
yellow means orange. It means orange.
yeah, well, as long as the light was yellow, I was believing that I was okay to go through the intersection. Another an MP summarily informed me that I was not allowed to do that, and I had to pay a small fine at the federal magistrate's office to get rid of that. So that was like a $50 fine. But when you take a look at it, people on post have the same rules and regulations that you have off post. But I think that the understanding is that most of the law enforcement on post are not going to go right for the nightstick and put you on the hood of the car.
That's pretty nice. That's actually fairly nice. That's a good deal for you guys.
Yeah. Now,
Let me ask you a question
granted, if
now.
you have
Uh,
firearms in your car and they're not registered on post, you may get that kind of treatment.
well, I understand that, but that's violating their law, and I understand that the thing with even with firearms because it is it is times of strife and security threat. I totally understand that on post. Now, let me ask you this: regarding these soldiers that were shot off in off post positions at recruiting stations and all that, do the military police from the base visit any of these recruiting stations?
No, because you got to remember, a lot of these recruiting stations are far away from uh, locations where there's a large military presence. For example, where I was at, the nearest federal base to me was the Presidio of Monterey, which was over 2 hours away from me. Um, there are guys that are recruiting in Montana that have one Air Force base within 500 miles of them. Guys in Utah that they don't have anything nearby except for a Dugway Proving Ground. So it's a thing where we rely on the local civilian law enforcement to really not maintain a constant presence, but to have enough of a visible presence to hopefully deter anybody from going and doing that stuff. And you can see what
Yeah,
happens.
what would you think that the amount of time that local law enforcement actually spends patrolling and providing, safetiness
Well,
to?
I can tell you from personal experience that the San Jose and Santa Clara police departments, which was where my recruiting station was located, they came by once every hour, but that was solely to mark the tires on our government vehicles when we parked in front of the recruiting station, which was a no parking zone.
So they just were there to give you tickets.
Yeah, pretty much. Go ahead, ticket
So,
the government. I'm not paying it.
all right, that'll work. Okay, I understand that. All right, so now in regards to this event that happened with these deaths and the shootings at the recruiting stations, we've got some people who have seen it their duty to step up and actually stand in front of recruiting stations with a gun.
Yeah,
How do you feel about that?
we've got them. We've got them out here where I live, and you're only going to see this in states that allow open carry. Uh, here's the way I feel about it. If you're a citizen and you're going out doing your thing and you're not breaking any laws, more power to you. Because you know what? That's exactly why I'm in the service in the first place, is to provide people the opportunity to live their lives and do things the way that they want to do it. Um, do I feel less safe because somebody's got a firearm outside of a recruiting station? Not necessarily. Especially if there are a bunch of people that have a common goal, which is to protect the people inside. I would say that that's actually instead of it really being a show of force, that's a vote of no confidence in the fact that our civilian law enforcement can't do anything to protect the soldiers. So, I commend them. I commend them for going out there, taking time out of their day to say, hey, thanks. You guys are actually willing to stand up and provide a a sort of a guard service in the sense that you don't want the recruiting station in your town to be the next one that gets shot up. I can tell you that won't happen in San. And I think that it was really telling to see that she was trying to purge information out of this guy, saying, "Hey, was this shooter, was he into guns? Was he the typical Southerner?" And the high school student that knew him was like, "What are you talking about? The guy's from Kuwait. He's not a typical Southerner, number one, and I don't think I ever saw him with a gun in the first place." So, it's the narrative that's being pushed, is that because anybody
and that narrative is also
enjoys firearms is going to go nuts and shoot people up, and yet we allow these news outlets to tiptoe around the fucking elephant and say, "Oh, hey, the dude is now, as we're coming to find out, the dude was on different media sites with folks that have jihadist mindsets." And
oh yeah, dude. Well, everybody, but that's everybody. They always go to the jihadist websites and all this. But let me ask you, I don't know. I don't know what
counter that is. I'm going to say that guy's not a homegrown Tennessee dude. The dude was from.
Well, actually, I think I'm going to agree with you on this, and I think you might agree with me on this on another level. But if this guy is a radical Muslim and a devotee of the Quran and committed to jihad and smiting the infidels and whatnot, why is the picture that they keep on pushing on the news of this guy for a DUI in April of this year, right? So what kind of radical Muslim goes out and gets a DUI? What sort of radical Muslim, a devotee of the Quran, keeps a diary of his drug use, a detailed diary of his drug use? I'm going to ask you, what kind of any kind of drug user out there keeps a detailed diary of their drug use?
Well, and the only ones that are doing that are the ones trying to figure out where the money's going. But to answer your question, it's very simple. It's honestly, it's almost too simple. So the individual himself, at the times he is using those drugs and drinking, yeah, he's not the good Muslim. He is not the good Muslim. But what he is attempting to do is to purge his sins by going out and conducting jihad, which is exactly what is prescribed within the Quran. Slay them where they lay. So there you go. That's exactly why.
Say what you want about the Catholics. Confession is much better than that.
I mean, having been on the other side and having lived,
explode your confession, dude.
Yeah, having seen it firsthand, I will tell you that there are folks who are moderates, there are folks that are extremists in any walk of life, any faith. But I will tell you that you can get a couple of Catholics together, and they're probably just going to, bitch about Sunday Mass being in the middle of frickin' football, unless you're in Northern Ireland. But you get a couple of Muslims together in Iraq, and they're probably going to be figuring out the best way to go ahead and lay some bombs on the side of the road when an American patrol goes by. That's the difference. Individually, like I said, I've known Iraqis that.
Yeah, but I gotta turn this around on you.
Well, you're gonna have to go pretty hard, because I've seen it from a couple different angles. So
I understand, but if you were in their shoes, would you be trying to kick you out?
Well, it depends. It deppends. Because you got to remember, this is not an argument like, oh, hey, you're getting invaded by another nation. Because what do you understand about Muslims in the first place? They don't subscribe to the idea of nation states, correct?
No, they
don't. They just understand invader. That's all they understand. This is why the Arab Spring, which we funded a good part of, was a really bad idea. Because even though these despots and dictators,
what have you done policy-wise that has been a good idea? Not any of it.
Well, I'll tell you what. The French and the British had a pretty good idea way back when they started carving up chunks of the desert, and they started segregating different clans and different tribes and different families. They knew what they were doing, and that was to make sure that a caliphate could not be risen. And here you go. When you remove those strongmen and those people that are keeping people under the thumbscrews, this is what you get. And, it's sad to say that history is a good teacher. I think you'll agree with me in that.
I would say that history is not only a good teacher, it repeats itself.
It does. So when you take a look at what happened at the end of the Ottoman Empire, you had a lot of people in that part of the world that was just running around trying to get theirs before everybody else did, right? And it's kind of the same thing going on now. The only point is that today we have social media, whereas before it took months for word to get across the desert. Now it takes seconds. You see in Baltimore how kids talk on any one of their different social media pages about how they're going to purge, and everybody shows up at one place and overwhelms the cops in that area. It's the same concept all the way across the Middle East.
And let me throw something in on that. Was it not interesting that during those riots that everybody showed up to riot was it seemed to be outfitted by Under Armour?
Well, they did knock off them all, so I mean it's not that hard.
That's true. Did
Yeah,
they actually smash a whole mall?
yeah, they got in through Mondawmin Mall, which is in Baltimore. So
See, I won't have any respect for any of the rioters or any of these kind of guys until they actually like take the fight to like where it counts. The day they sack the tax office and burn all kinds of records and blow up computers, woohoo! I'm on your side. The day they hit a bank and like destroy a bank, I'm on your side.
yeah,
But keep on knocking over
you
Foot
got to
Locker and
remember
Best
that
Buy.
that's where Al Sharpton keeps his money, so they're not going to do that.
Right. So yeah, I think all the riots and all that are fake. Except for I don't know. I'll tell you what. You taken a look at Greece? What's going on in Greece and what's going on in Italy?
Yeah, this is the summer of the sum. This is an annual summer ritual in Greece. So
Well, yeah, but this is a little bit of anger over their currency situation. I mean, they're limited to ATM withdrawals of $60 a day, and they can't leave the country with more than $200. And the banks are saying everything's fine. Please come deposit it.
of course, because
While
it's
the
a heck of a
city
lot
bunks is
easier
not.
to seize the funds of people that are your depositors than going after
Right.
them if they doing it through a pension fund or something like that.
Well, I'll tell you what I've seen that I've actually enjoyed is that with the riots in Greece, they haven't really attacked any private businesses or even any like any many corporation businesses. What they've really done is attack the banks and tax offices. I think they're straight up on the ball right there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, put it this way: the things that are going on in Greece, it's pretty sad because you've got the finance minister who had to resign after saying that, hey, we're not going to take any more bailouts. And what's the next thing they do? They go ahead and they go right back to the European Central Bank. They go back to the European Union and say, hey, we need another X number billion dollars. And to their credit, they got it. But the problem is that they signed on for even more things that, you know, 2 years down the road, they're not going to want to go ahead and pay back. So, you got to take a little bit of a wider look at that and say from the rest of the European community, maybe Germany, maybe France, people that have solvent economies. Uh, Eventually, it's going to come down to the point where you're not going to be retiring at 60 in those places because you're going to be trying to spend more time working so that the government can get taxes off of you to pay for this this debt package that they've given to places like Greece, Italy, Spain, Ireland. You know,
How long do you think those people put up with it?
well, see, that's the thing.
Because like they seem
German,
to riot on a
if
on a
if you know
fairly
if you know anything
regular
about
basis.
Germans, Germans are all about law and order. They may not follow it all the time, but they expect other people to. Uh, Italy, not so much. And having lived in both places, I can tell you, I can see the logic on both sides. And I think that would like to think that most Americans are more closely aligned with Germany than we like to believe or even would expect to believe, because a lot of Americans, the folks that do support those on the welfare programs, we understand that a good portion of our income goes to provide for social services that maybe we don't agree with, but that's the law of the land, and we do our part. Germany is very much the same way, and the average worker in Germany is working, to basically fund all these other lecherous countries like Portugal, like Spain, like Italy, and
Lecherous countries. That's awfully Western banking centered view to take. I mean,
well, I'll tell you
lecherous
this
to a
much:
point
it's not so much it's not so much an idea as far as the banking habits of those countries. I'm talking about the individual work habits of people from Portugal, Spain, Italy, Ireland. I've worked with them for many years, having lived in Italy, having lived in Germany, and having worked with them while I was assigned in NATO. And I can tell you that some of the laziest folks in Europe actually come from Southern Europe. Um, folks in Italy love them, but you know what? They don't have the work ethic that Americans do. It's a
We
totally
are
different mindset.
we are going to get boycotted by the Southern European Action Committee or something like that now.
Well, see, the good thing is I know how to counter that, and that's to be able to have a lot of red wine and a lot of beef.
Ah, Jesus. All right, so these guys standing out in front of the recruiting stations with firearms. I got to get back to that. I think it's admirable. I think it's needed, as you said, to show a vote of no confidence in the system. Something I would like to address is I've seen a couple pictures of a guy who was sitting out in front of I don't remember where it was, someplace in Alabama or something like that. And it was somewhere in the South. And I did not mean to pick on people from Alabama or anything like that. I love my brothers in Alabama. But he was standing in front of the recruiting station, and he had a AR-15 pistol that had the SIG brace on it. And then he had a forward grip, on the rail.
Yep.
And that makes it an any other weapon. And there was no kind of indication that this guy was any kind of stamp holder or anything. And to be honest with you, that's a stupid stamp to get. That's a throwing money away stamp right there.
Yeah, I mean, a fool in his money, right?
Right. So this guy's picture has been taken and passed around. It was actually, I think I saw it first on CNN, and it's been passed around. And of course, in the gun groups, they've just massacred this guy. I think this guy set himself up for a problem. I wouldn't be surprised if in the next couple of days we hear about the ATF coming and visiting him and asking to see his rifle and, basically probably taking him to jail because they got pictures of it.
Well, and that's the thing. This is one of those things that I think most gun owners probably consider whenever they're going to, either do a short barrel rifle or anything that requires a federal tax stamp. Do you really want to have to make yourself visible? Because basically what that guy did was put a target on himself. Because what's worse, aside from the other, lawful gun owners that are out there, probably nervous around this guy, the antis are a very, very, media savvy bunch.
And this is, well, they're very media savvy, but they're not necessarily gun savvy. And if this would have been just left to the antis, this guy's picture would have been ridiculed for his, he's not California thin, he's obviously, he's just from his picture. I know a bunch of guys just like him. He enjoys a good meal. Probably likes to have a couple beers every once in a while, and he's a good old boy, and he's doing what he thinks is right. And I gotta commend the guy for that. But the minute everybody in our culture, we almost seem to build ourselves up by tearing others down and pointing out mistakes and things like that. And I'm seeing, there was a lot of discussion brought up about this guy breaking the law, straight up on us breaking the law with the any other weapon. And we're going on the assumption that this guy doesn't have a stamp. All right?
Well, and that's
I don't
the thing.
know anybody.
Do we pull people over on assumptions? We don't, but cops do all the time.
I think cops do,
Yeah.
But anyhow, I'm going on the assumption that he doesn't have a stamp because, number one, that is the most heinous waste of time, money, effort, and subjecting yourself to unnecessary scrutiny by the big boys to get that stamp.
Yeah, you'll get in touch with a 4-letter agency pretty quick.
Right. So I don't see many people doing that to get that any other weapon stamp. But if it wasn't for our side pointing out, hey, this dude is busting the law right there, and being loud and vocal, and then kind of ridiculing this guy in online situations, well, the antis picked up on it. And to be straight up honest with you, 99% of the people who were anti-gun didn't have a fucking clue what this guy was doing was illegal. All they knew is he was just a fat dude with a beard. He's probably from the South and had a Confederate flag sticker on his truck, and probably had Whataburger or Dairy Queen for lunch.
Yeah.
And look at him, big fat boy, grease stains, whatever.
Well, then,
but the minute that they pointed it out, our side points it out that he's breaking the law. Well, they jumped in on it. So I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to respond on this one.
Well, here's the thing. My years in Afghanistan, my years in Iraq have taught me a couple things. And number one, anytime you're trying to win the media war, you have to be first to the truth and being able to get the truth out there to the public. And if, as a community of lawful gun owners, if we're going to go out there and point out when, those among us are doing wrong, that's the responsible thing to do, because we're increasing knowledge for maybe somebody who, wasn't intending to break the law, but just by the actions of their own ignorance was doing so. I would say that that's much better than waiting for some anti with a little bit of time on his hands to read any, statute or regulation to come out and see, look, these guys are doing it intentionally, and this is willful, blatantly disregard for public safety and yada, 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 yada. It has a different bunch of gravitas. Yeah, I think that when we point out our own shortcomings and we're accountable to that, maybe it's like going into a judge and saying, yes, Your Honor, I completely understand where I was at fault. It's out of character for me. I don't ever expect to do this again. And thank you very much for your time.
And enjoy your $10,000 fine and 10 years in prison, because you don't get to violate the NFA Act of 1968 because you had good intention.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying.
I think so. I think really this old boy, if I was him, I'd totally shave and get rid of that rifle.
Might lose a few I'd shave these. So yeah, I think honestly,
if I was that dude, seriously, if I was that dude, I'd shave that goddamn beard off. I'd wear completely opposite, different color clothes than I was wearing in that picture, and I'd get rid of that rifle. I have no idea who you're talking about, officer.
The lake, sir. Yeah, and who's to say that wasn't an anti in disguise? Who knows?
That's been known to happen. We can refer back to the Target incident, less than 2 years ago, where, well, I guess it was probably just about a year ago. And I forgot what state it was in, but there had been an open
probably
carry
in the Midwest. So
there had been an open carry demonstration, and somebody said they found a handgun hidden in the children's toys after the open carry demonstration. Like, these open carry dudes come through there and then just hung out on the toy aisle and set their high point 9mm on the shelf and forgot to pick it up, considering it's such a cheap weapon, right? And to me, this stinks, because open carry people seem to be uber enthusiasts who are super proud of what they've got. And to be quite honest with you, not a lot of them would be caught dead carrying a high power or a high point in public as part of their open carry display. Take pictures of me with this. Number two, open carry enthusiasts at this time, they're really concerned about, not violating laws. And, to be honest with you, leaving a gun behind the children's toys is violating laws.
Yeah, I'm going to say a lot of commercial organizations. Target has been one in the past that has succumbed to pressure from the anti-movement. There's a lot.
Whataburger has said, Whataburger in the state of Texas has said that they're not going to allow open carry in their stores. So whatever.
Yeah, I can go through the drive-through because I don't need to sit inside Whataburger.
Well, you know what? I'm just probably not going to eat a Whataburger anymore.
Yeah, they're not paying for us, so
it ain't necessarily like good food for me, and it's aside from the A1 thick and hearty burger, it's not all that tasty.
Yeah, but you know what? You can't get spicy ketchup anywhere else.
That's fine. That's fine. I don't necessarily eat it.
Yeah. So I think we're closing up on the civilians standing outside the recruiting stations. I think, it's a show of solidarity with your recruiters, and it's a vote of no confidence for law enforcement. So I look at it and I'm like, hey, thanks guys, appreciate it. Thanks for looking out. That's the way I see it.
Do you see any area of the country where this would actually be truly necessary?
Oh, certainly. I mean, when you take a look at it, It's not the way you would think. The answer wouldn't necessarily be New York, Newark, Chicago, San Francisco. It wouldn't be anything like that. But it would be the areas of this country that have been resettled by people that were either asylum or being removed from conflict zones. That's where I would look to have that. Because when you take a look at it, this guy in particular, he was from Kuwait. His family resettled there, during the time where the family fled during the original Gulf War. So yeah, that's where I'm looking at. I'm looking, racial profiling. While it may be wrong, it is exactly what we do on a daily basis in places like Afghanistan and Iraq, and it works. And the reason it works is because there is a preponderance of a certain segment of the population to do bad things. And if we didn't operate on that premise, we wouldn't be as effective as we have been at, stopping, things like bombs being planted on roadways, over there. And granted, we're not looking for bombs being planted over here, but it happens, and you have to take a look. You can't ignore the facts. And the fact is,
do you think that IEDs are coming home to the United States?
they're
And
already
and
here. What do you mean? They're
if
already
so,
here.
I'm not talking about pressure cooker bombs and all that
That's
FBI
exactly what it
thwarted
is.
bullshit.
That's
Yeah, but all
exactly
that
what it
pressure
is.
but listen, all that stuff. Not one of these things that have been like a terrorist incident. Aside from this, and I'm sure in the coming days we'll find out that the FBI has been watching this guy and been in contact with him
No,
and
they came out
all
in
kinds of
front.
shit. Just like every
They said we haven't been watching this guy at all. That was from the get go. They said we are treating this as if it's a terrorist attack, and he was not on our radar. So that tells you
well,
right off the
they
bat.
say that
If they
about
can come
all
out and say
of.
that right off the bat, then I'm going to say that they genuinely didn't have this guy under any kind of surveillance.
I personally don't believe anything they say. I think it's all a bunch of lies, to be honest
Well,
with you.
it could be, but
Because I mean,
here's the point.
listen. There's just this story about this dude getting a DUI and writing a diary, a love story about his use of narcotics. That doesn't ring true for jihadists to me. I'm
Well,
sorry,
actually,
it doesn't.
if you understand a little bit more, what he's trying to do is redeem himself. So it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. And I'll tell you, anybody that has ever been overseas and has been, manning a checkpoint or have been in a remote location along a roadway that has seen the guy in the ubiquitous, what we call him distasha, or the man dress that has a shaved beard. Yeah,
Man
that's
dress.
that's a candidate for as our good friend of the show, Oddball, would say, we want to go ahead and load a heat round on that guy. So yeah, you got to kind of understand that while this guy may have been the bad Muslim in terms of him drinking and doing drugs and getting DUIs, all he needs to do to justify his existence in the eyes of his faith is to go out and do something that the Quran commands him to do, and that is to slay the infidels where they lie. And I'll tell you, anybody who is anybody that has an ounce of independent thought and can put two and two together will see that the United States is not at war with radical Islam. The United States is at war with Islamic terrorism, and it's not fundamental. It is basic. It is
Okay,
basic,
so
and
let
it
me
is
let me ask
to
you
their
this. Let me ask
belief.
you this. If we're at war with Islamic terrorism and the fundamentalism or whatever it is that we're in war with, why do we keep funding it? Why do we keep extending the war? Why do we keep arming it? And why do we keep basically prolonging it,
What what
making
did-
it
what did John
worse?
McCain say? John McCain said he never met a war that he didn't like.
I think he said something about 100 years of
Exactly, and, and
freeing this
and I will
shit
tell
up,
you, he
dude.
was not being facetious. If John McCain ever told the truth, that was it. Aside from the time he said that he wanted to bomb Iran.
Yeah, I think he was pretty honest at that point as well.
Exactly. So you know,
What do you think about? All right, so let's hit something a little more topical to this. What do you think about Trump saying that McCain isn't a war hero?
I think that Donald Trump has opened his mouth and put his foot squarely inside of it. Anybody that was a member of the military during the Vietnam years had had a really poor homecoming. And it's one thing that, if I ever had an Obama moment and I been alive, I would have been ashamed to have been an American, would have been to see how poorly the average soldier, sailor, Marine, airman was getting treated upon returning from Vietnam. That would have that would have made my stomach turn to see fellow Americans actually taking out their frustrations with the government on the people who went in their stead to go do a job that the people themselves via their elected representatives sent them to do.
I think
I, I,
I don't think that Trump was taking that tack.
I
I
don't think
think
he was, but
more
I think that
Trump.
what he was doing, he was treading a very, very, very thin line with Ronald McDonald's shoes.
I would agree with you. I think he opened up his big fat yapper without thinking, to be honest with you. But let's get to kind of what he was alluding at. There's several people out there that maintain that McCain's name was Songbird while he was in prison.
Well, I will tell
Uh,
you, I don't, like I said, never having been a member of a prison community, and certainly, you look at John McCain, you look at his arms, and being a guy who's actually lost the use of my arms for a period of time, I will tell you, whatever that man had done to him, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. And I will tell you that he has very, very distinct views on things like torture and whether the United States should implement torture as a ways of getting information. He is a member of a very, very small community that can speak intelligently on that. Where I think that he has his faults is, yes, he doesn't necessarily go with what his constituency wants. Having been a member of his home state, I can tell you that. He's a very big proponent of increased government as a conservative. That's his line, uh, and he's not necessarily a guy who thinks before he speaks when it comes to national security, or he tends to talk in a very forthright and open manner, and kind of cavalierly about sending other children, of sending children of other Americans off to places where they could potentially die. I think that
let
those
me
are his
ask you. Let
faults.
me ask you
That's it.
another question. Let me ask you another question. How do you feel about his views on we must stand with Israel at all costs?
That that's that's
Um,
that's his opinion. I'll tell you what. I never saw Israel standing with me while I was in Afghanistan. I never saw him standing with me when I was in Iraq. Never saw him standing with me when I was in Korea. So yeah, that's what he's getting paid to say. So when it comes down to it,
I find it funny. I saw something recently that showed that Hillary said that the boycotting Israel really doesn't do anything, and it's really just bad for the increased peace process, and in the long term, it doesn't benefit anything. And I just kind of found it funny that people would actually argue over the fact that she said that, and not just like absolutely realize, well, of course that's what she'd say. All of her donors are serious Israeli sympathizers. I mean, look at who they are. I mean, Goldman Sachs, for Christ's sakes.
yeah.
You know,
Well, I mean, like I said, I personally have no love lost there. But I just wanted to finish up on the John McCain thing. Talking about Trump. You pose the question, what do you think? I will say this. You know, anybody that can see this is the same tactic that Donald Trump is employing right now, is the same tactic that was employed during the times of increased immigration to this country. Whether it was the late 1800s, turn of the century, he's playing up the fear. He's whipping up the red-blooded folks that are saying, "Yeah, we're going to get rid of all those goddamn illegals. All those illegals are doing nothing but killing and raping, and yeah, they're going to be running
taking
all."
our jobs,
Yeah, you
taking
know,
our jobs.
I'll tell you, you know what? That can only last for so long, because
Yeah, he's a
when it
clown.
comes down to a presidential election, that may get you a couple of voters here and there. That's not what the average American thinks. I would like to think that the average American says, you know what? We're no longer a nation of innovators, and we're no longer a nation of builders, but you know what? We do stand for the idea that, hey, if you're willing to work hard and you're willing to come here and bring ideas to make this country better, we're more than willing to have you. And that has nothing to do with the color of your skin. That has everything to do with the amount of character you have as a person. And I think that, you know what? He's gonna find that he done fucked up. And especially when it comes to the military, I think that the military voter is going to sit here and say, you know what? You probably shouldn't say such things about John McCain in the sense that, yeah, okay, he's
Ain't
not been
talking
known
shit
for
about.
like when he was on the Forrestal with his A4 that basically killed 120 something sailors when the rocket got set off by static electricity. Uh, you know, hey, things happen, right? But because of what he's done, I don't think that you can sit here and say that he wasn't a war hero. As far as I believe, Donald Trump evaded the draft. So yeah, that doesn't hold any weight with me.
All right, that's cool. Now let's get to something a little touchier. Donald Trump versus Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. What do you think? Who do you take in a fair fight between Trump and Chapo Guzman? You know, 10 rounds, 3 minutes each in the squared circle. Cleveland rules, dude.
Cleveland rules. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to take El Chapo with this because before he even sets in the ring, somebody's going to have Donald in pieces out in the back of the parking lot.
And you know what? It'll probably be a drywall dude, building one of his, finishing off one of his casinos or something right there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think, look, Donald Trump says he's worth 10 million or 10, I'm sorry, $10 billion, and a lot of that wealth is on paper. And I think truly, like in reality, if Donald Trump has to buy new tires for his limo, he's got to go out and get a loan and buy them things on credit. Um, in real life, I think Donald Trump's got massive amounts of debt. He's declared
Oh
bankruptcy
yeah,
times.
totally.
I mean,
And
massive amount, like real physical debt, like uncompleted buildings and serious contracts, or money going out that's really not being replaced by anything. And on the flip side, Chapo Guzman is probably close to, like, I would guess 50% liquid, in cash, gold, bonds, whatever. I'm guessing he's got a good deal of money, like secreted away in companies that actually, like, he's laundering money through something. He's probably making a killing. I wouldn't be surprised if he owns like 15 Church's Fried Chicken, like in, Kansas City or something.
yeah, well,
Uh,
I mean, hey, you know what? It's going to come to pass that Donald Trump has been employing the same people he's excoriating, and at that point, your goose is cooked. So he can.
he'll just 1B visa for Pakistani drywall workers, and then Trump will become friends with the Pakistanis or something like that.
Yeah,
I don't think that Trump will win the Hispanic vote.
I don't think so either.
I don't think so either. All right, so let's hit it real quick. First rule of gun safety.
Go for
Is it? You tell me. Come on now. Is it a
it.
test?
Every firearm is loaded that you can assume so, whether or not you physically inspect it, and until doing so.
Second rule of firearm safety is know where that muzzle is pointed at all times. Don't cover anything you don't wish to destroy. Rule number 3 is know what your target is and know what is beyond your target at all time. And rule number 4, I firmly believe, is the most important rule: is please keep the booger hook off the bang switch until you are ready to discharge the firearm. Keep your finger out of the trigger guard until you are ready to unleash holy hell upon the target.
Oh, there you go. And if you got those nice green tip polymers until the Zombie Max ammo runs out.
Yeah, and then you'll have to switch to the steel case Wolf that comes in a 900 round container that you got to open up with a grinder. Which, by the way, let's talk about that real quick. Have you ever opened up like a Russian spam can of ammo?
Not in a long time.
How did you do it?
They usually have the little key on the side.
Did you use the key?
I did because I personally didn't want to get the holy hell cut out of my hand.
I find it easier to, if you don't have the key, to use a screwdriver. You bang a screwdriver into it, and you just kind of like follow the edge around, and it actually cuts fairly easy with the a flat blade screwdriver. You just bang it around. But the nice way to do it is to take a grinder and grind off that top lip, and then you'll have saved the lid, and it pops off really nice and no sharp edges, and you've got use of the lid and use of the container. So handy dandy tips for communist ammo goodies.
Yep, that it would. You know, it's kind of
You
interesting
see that?
because one of my buddies actually let me shoot a couple boxes worth German Weisskern 7.62 by 5.1 ammo, and you know those come in just little cardboard boxes, so they're actually come out of a bandolier.
Is that is I've never heard of Weisskern. I've never had the opportunity to shoot that. Is that considered like a military surplus
Yeah, that's
ammo? Is it
that's a military surplus that makes the, you know, like I said, the same NATO designation. So, you know, it's going to go boom.
That's cool. I really got no problem with military surplus ammo. I prefer not to get anything from like the subcontinent area, but I've got nothing from no problems against anything from Eastern Europe, or actually I even like Korean stuff. I really dig the Korean stuff. China, I used to really enjoy Chinese ammunition back when it was available. I thought Chinese ammunition was a screaming deal, and I kind of missed the smell of Chinese cordite, to be honest with you. Almost guessing that we'll smell it again soon.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm looking forward to the next round of I guess we can call them, you know, protected citizens that our government is going to go after, and it looks like this time it's going to be the pensioners, anybody on Social Security.
I think they're going to try and take firearms from people on Social Security, thinking they're going to be robbing feeble oldsters. And I think there's going to be a couple Charles Bronsons out there who ain't going to take it.
Well,
And
yeah, but I mean, they're going to use the same
uh,
logic. They're going to use the same logic to deny, you know, pensioners the right to own firearms that they're saying that can't be used against people to prevent them from voting. So, you know, if you're adjudicated to be mentally insufficient, they're going to say that you can vote, but you can't own a firearm, which I believe, you know, in the way our system of government works, maybe one is more important than the other. But, you know, the first people to stand up and say, hey, you can't stand on their rights to vote, and, you know, and we need to be able to have 15 people get the same person to help them fill out their ballot. That's okay. But you're not going to be able to have an 87-year-old man who's probably served this country be able to have his own firearm. Yeah, that'll go
do
over
you
like a
think
turd in a
that's
punch
going
bowl.
to do you think that this is going to receive a lot of flack, and do you feel that this is going to be something that is actually going to make it through?
Well, see, this is the thing. This is the problem with having, you know, you're having laws and regulations stepped up by a bureaucracy, which is what the ATF is.
And we know that the ATF really isn't much of anything other than a big pain in the ass.
That is true. That is
Nick,
true.
I want to thank you for coming on with me tonight. It's been a hectic couple weeks for you. I know you've had a lot going on, and I
Yeah.
really want to thank you for. I really want to thank you for not pissing around and just being here and putting in the time and effort, and changing it up for us.
You know, like I said, good thing is being able to have an opinion, and that's what UCY.TV gives us. It gives us a platform to say what we want to say, and you know what? That's what we're here for. Thanks, Jules.
Nick, thank you very much. Everybody, thank you. Love you a lot. Geoengineering Watch up next. Hasta la vista, babies.